it's time to get this show going. So let's get things started. Let's go to full screen. Just give me a thumbs up. You guys can just see the title screen here. Okay, good. Let's do it. Let's do some cooking. And welcome to episode 21 for this year. We've done a lot of edits over the year, haven't we? And what's interesting is I was looking at some of the previous episodes. Actually, my groupings, my collections I have in Lightroom that I make for each episode of the images I'm going to use. And wow, there are a whole bunch of images that I had prepared that we never did. So I've got a couple of them today, but I've got more, as always, I've got more tonight than I could ever do in one sitting. So I might have to do a little picking and choosing again. As an hors d'oeuvre, this is just going to be a quick little one because it's just got a couple of techniques that I want to share with you that are important. Obvious, this was a panoramic, and I didn't bother filling in the bottom or anything. I just wanted to get to a couple of different tools here. So let me make a virtual copy, Command apostrophe. All right, here's our virtual copy. So what are the problems? Well, pretty obvious. Open up the shadows, bring down the highlights, open up the entire exposure a little bit. So looking better already. Let's go ahead and do the presence thing, a little bit of texture. I know you've heard this before. Let's just go over them again real quickly, what they do. Under presence, texture is going to increase contrast on very fine details. Think of it as a sharpening of fine details. Clarity does the same thing, except a little broader, and it is designed for mid-tone sharpening. And then dehaze is shadows. It's going to increase the contrast and sharpen the edges in that. So if we add a little bit of clarity, just to show you, let's go all the way, we can make it look really ugly. Do you guys remember when HDR first started showing up, the HDR programs, and everybody's images looked like this? Because the HDR programs are out of control. Just be gentle with them. And as far as dehaze goes, it's going to darken up the entire image, which in this case is actually kind of nice. Before we get into cropping, even if this was completely correct as far as vertical, horizontal goes, it looks like it's leaning up because of this far shoreline. So before we do anything else, let's go to the cropping tool up here. And two ways we can do it. We can do it by eyeball. And by the way, your eyes are really good at this. If you come down to a corner, for some reason I favor the lower right, and you click on it, you get the grid, and in many cases it's going to pretty much line up on what it is you need to see. And if you look at the far shoreline, now the grid is saying that it is straight. Now, it also doesn't look straight because of the other stuff that's missing. In fact, we're going to probably have to go into Photoshop to do something with that. So let's hit enter on that. And now, strangely enough, to my eye, even though it says it's correct, it looks like it's up too high. So let's hit R again. And what I'm trying to say here is that if it looks right to your eye, it's right. Don't worry about the numbers. So I'm going to actually bring this down. I'm going to just go back and forth a little bit, make you all seasick. There we go. Let's bring this down a little bit because technically that shoreline is coming a little closer to us. And when it looks right to your eyes, it is. Now, I may want to do it afterwards, but I want to maintain this particular peak right here. Down the bottom, I don't care as much. Is there anything else? Is there anything else I want to do in Lightroom here before we move along? And yes, I don't remember if I used a polarizer on here. I'm going to guess I did not. But you can still see there's some variations in the sky. And yes, there's a new slider in Lightroom called Variations. We'll save it for next time. But this is kind of light over here. Actually, the entire sky is a little bit light. So let's go ahead and do that first. We'll just click up to the mask panel, click on sky, and let's just darken it a little bit. We'll bring the exposure down. Yeah, something like that looks a little better. Now, I'm also looking at this, and I've used terms before, and a couple of people have asked me about them. I will talk about cooling or warming, or it looks too cyan to me, that kind of thing. All right, I'm looking at that sky, and to me it's looking a little bit cyan. What does that mean? Let's use the color mixer to go in there. So I'm going to hit enter on these. Let's go down to the color mixer, and we're going to get the eyedropper and come over and pick on this piece of sky. And when we click on it, you see we have this inverted triangle of the blue. To the right of that, it goes to the magenta. To the left of that, it goes to cyan. This is cyan, this color right here. And you can see it's slightly to the cyan side. So it's kind of a slightly greenish kind of color. It takes some of the blue out. You can either click on the dot and drag it, or what's probably easier is this slider, because the slider is going to drag it in the direction that you see up here. So if I drag to the right, it goes to the right. If there's a cyan sky. That's pretty weird. But I just want to come over a smidge. And while I'm at it, let's go ahead and increase the saturation a bit. And actually, that looks pretty good. I think we can just be done with that. So now we have a better sky. These shadows here in the trees, are they too dark? I'm not sure. Let's look at them at 50%. And we'll navigate over with the navigator here. Are they too dark? Well, let's look at the numbers in the histogram. As I put the hand over in here, you can see I've got 4.3, 8.3, 8.6. I think I want to bring this up a little bit. So let's get a brush on our masking panel. Again, if you remember, I'll create new mask, but remember that brush is K. So let's just drag through here. I've got auto mask on, so it's only picking shadows. And I also want to get some of the shadows that are in the water. And let's bring these up a little bit. Let's just open it up a smidge. That's all it needed, just to get the blacks not quite so black. And if we hit enter on that and then come over here, it's not a lot brighter, but you see now we have 7.9, 9.5. It's just not quite that deep dark black. Shadows are important, but we don't necessarily want them to go too close to pure black, because if you do, it draws the eye. The eye goes to the brightest thing first, but if there's something that's really close to pure black, it's going to go there too. For example, look here, right here, this spot here and this spot here, draw your eye because they look black. So let's hit K again and just click on that and that. And I'm just going to use the black slider. Let's bring the black slider up a little to open them up, and then the exposure. I'm also going to push them to the green and blue a little bit to add some of that green back in and increase the saturation. Nope, I don't want to increase the saturation. Let's leave that alone. And hit enter on that. And now it's not quite as black as it was. In fact, I think I might have gone too far. Let's go back up to our masks. Here's the one we just did. In fact, I don't like how it did it on the reflection, so I'm going to subtract. And by the way, when you have a mask selected and it disappears, if you want to see it, you can just hit the O key, and that brings it back. That'll always show you what you've got selected, even if it gets hidden. So let's hit subtract. Whoops. Let's hit subtract with a brush, and let's get rid of it in the reflections, because the reflections were lighter somewhat. And I'm also going to bring the exposure down just a little bit. All right, let's hit enter on that. And okay, that looks good. As I mentioned, I don't need this entire bottom. Yes, it's a mirror reflection, but it's not a perfect mirror because there's just way too much on down here. But as I mentioned also, I don't want to lose this peak. And if we crop it to get rid of the blank spaces, it's going to look too close to the edge. You cannot, by the way, fill in blank spaces once you're in Lightroom. You can do it when you're constructing the panoramic, either by using a fill or their own warp tool there. We'll do that on a panel later. But this one we can't. So let's just send it into Photoshop with Command E, which will take this file and open up in Photoshop. All right, here it is. Oh, by the way, if you move something around, if you hit Command or Control 0 while you're in Photoshop, it recenters you to full screen, just so you know. All right, I'm going to back off on the zoom a little bit. Zoom in Photoshop is Z, and if you hold down the Alt key, it turns it into a minus, just so we have a little bit more room there. So we've got these things. I'm going to use the magic wand. Do you guys want to see how to create an action, by the way? I'm going to do something first, and then I'm going to show you how you can automate it so you don't have to go through all the steps. So let's pick this one up on the upper left-hand corner. And you can see as we zoom in on that, it's got what these are called the marching ants. It's got the marching ants around it. However, before we fill this, and we can just use content-aware fill for this, if we fill it as is, there's a good chance we're going to have a little border in between what we filled and the old sky. In fact, let's do that. I'm going to hit Function Shift F5, which is the keyboard shortcut for fill content aware, and hit Enter. And there we go. And I'm going to deselect that, and look what happened. See that? That's because, yeah, it didn't feather that image, so that piece. So let's undo that. And before we do the fill, we're going to go up to Select, Modify, Expand. And I typically do 3 to 5 pixels. I'll leave it at 5 pixels. And you can see now the selection is a little bit more. So now if I hit Function Shift F5 and then Enter, it does the same fill, but now that line is gone. So that's a really handy selection of options. So we got a couple little things here. We can just get rid of those. So we have one over here. And let's say, for example, this is something you do a lot. We can do something called make an action. Yes, a question.
I'm not seeing your shared screen.
Oh, are you guys seeing my screen? Can you guys see? Yes, everybody's seeing my screen, Di.
Okay, as long as they are.
Okay, for some reason Diane's not seeing my screen. She's like sitting right there.
I mean, I can compare it to your screen.
Okay. All right, so here's where actions are. They're actually under this little play thing right up here. It looks like a play thing. And you see actions. And what we're going to do is we're going to record one. Now, I will record it after I do the magic wand part because I need to have some control. So I'm going to hit W, which is the wand, and I'm going to click in here. So now that's selected. Now I'm going to create a new action. And basically an action just a set of commands to do all of these things that I say. So if you come up to the top here, and I'm going to create a new action. And we will call it expand and CA fill, content aware fill. And you can put it in a set, you can give it a color, you can assign a function key to it. I don't know what other these function keys are set for. Oh, let's try F12 with a shift. So Shift F12 will make this happen. And you simply hit record. And now everything you do is going to get added to that action. So the first thing I'm going to do is come down to Select, Modify, Expand. Expand it by 5. Hit OK. And now you see it's expanded. Now I'll come up to here and just go to Fill, Content Aware at 100% and hit OK. And there we go. And then I'm going to Command D, which is deselect that. And see the little red recording button here in the action thing? Now I'll just click on the stop right next to it. It's like old VCR controls. Okay, we just recorded that. So now let's see if I was successful. Let's go down to this big thing in the bottom. I'll get the magic wand again. I click on that and I'm going to hit Shift F12. And what the heck did I do? Hold on, am I on the right layer? Yes. Or do I need function on this keyboard? Oh, maybe I need function. Let's see. Function Shift F12. I think that was it. Look at that. It did all those things in just one keyboard. So one key thing. So that's what actions are. Way back when, for any of you guys that were using Photoshop 30 years ago, they used to be called macros. Does that ring a bell to anybody? Okay. So that's what actions are. So I'll Command 0 to see the whole thing. And I can see I've got one over here as well. So if I want, I can get the wand key. And I will hit the function Shift F12 to actually get to F12 on my keyboard. And there we go. Perfect. So there you go. A lesson in actions. Which again, if there's certain things you do in Photoshop and you do them all the time, and they're like these 12 different steps, Just record it and assign it to a function key, and one click and you're done. All right, so let's back off on here because there's just a couple things I want to do. There's a couple little pieces missing up top here. I don't think I really need them. I'm going to end up cropping them out, but these are so tiny. Let's just use the lasso tool. I'm just going to draw around these. Held down the shift key. Add this one up. I think I missed a little bit on the far left. And then this one. And again, my keyboard shortcut for content aware fill is function shift F5. Brings up content aware. And voila, they're gone. Okay. Now, something else I've mentioned, and this is a rather long hors d'oeuvre, but that's okay. I've mentioned this in Photoshop before. Something that Photoshop still does much better than Lightroom is color balance, color fixings. So I hit the Z key. Let's back off just a little bit, in fact, a little bit more. So here's our entire image. Do I like the color of the entire image? I'm not sure. It seems a little bit slightly off. Does it to you guys? I don't know. I don't know how accurate your screens are to mine. But let's go ahead and do a color balance adjustment to this. So down on our adjustment layers panel, way down the bottom here, we're going to do color balance. And actually now I'm going to zoom in on the screen. So that kind of is showing the entire image. Let's just start by dragging sliders back and forth. We got the midtones. We go to cyan, yuck. We go to red. Ooh, that looks better. So it needed a little red warmth in there. That's good. Magenta green. Magenta green, no. This whole image needs a little warming. That's what it's telling us. I'm going to guess yellow is going to be the answer here. Yellow, blue. Yes, it needed a little bit of yellow. And these are subtle adjustments, but they have a huge impact on the final image. Highlights, same thing. Cyan, yuck. Magenta, no. Maybe a couple points. No, this really didn't need anything. So we'll leave that alone. Magenta, magenta green. Actually, maybe a little green. And I'm looking at the clouds here. I want them to stay neutral. Yellow, blue, yellow, blue, yellow, blue. Neither of them look better. So if neither of them look better, then that balance is good. And then shadows. Rarely do you add red to shadows. Maybe a smidge of cyan. Nah, I'm going to leave that one alone. I'm suspecting the shadows are going to need some blue, though. Magenta, no. Green, no. That one's fine. Yellow, no. Maybe a little blue. Yes to a little blue. And Diane's poking me, so there must be a question. Yes, dear.
Marlene wants to know where the function key is.
The function key is usually right next to usually on the bottom left of your keyboard. Not all keyboards have it. My key, this is an aftermarket keyboard I'm using. And in order to access the function keys up on the top, I have to hold down the function key, which is right next to control on this keyboard. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's just turn this on and off what we just did with the color balance. And you see how there's just a slight warming in the shadows as I toggle this back and forth? That's what it needed. And this is something Photoshop is far superior to Lightroom in, this kind of color corrections. Now, as I look at it, as I toggle it on and off, these trees over here to me in the color correction have gone a little too yellow. I like what it did everywhere else, but right here, this just looks a little too yellow to me. Let's turn it back on. Yeah, it's a little too yellow. That's okay because whenever you do an adjustment layer, you get a mask with it. So click on the mask so it's highlighted. We're going to get a brush, which is the B key. There it is, brush. And I'm going to paint with black through here just to mask out the color balance adjustments we just did. So I am at 60%. Actually, that's fine. Let's do that. So I'm just going to start painting. No, I want 100%. I'm going to hit 0 on my keyboard and just paint with black in here. And my greens are coming back. Now, there's no masking you can see here, but if I alt-click on the mask, that's what I just did. to mask this thing out. Now when we do the color adjustment, now it's happening everywhere in the image except here. And actually this reflection right here could use a little bit too. Whoops, I painting on the image instead of on the, kind of on the mask. Okay, that looks great. So as I look at the image, what does the image need? Well, the bottom of the reflection, there's too much of it. It's overpowering everything that's above it. We have two choices. We can either crop it out or we can compress it. I'm going to compress it. So let's go ahead and I'm going to hold down the Alt key and choose Merge Visible, which maintains all our layers. I'm going to use the M key. M stands for Marquee, by the way, in Photoshop. I'm going to select the bottom half of the image, and we're going to use one of my favorite tools, Content Aware Scale, right there. How's that for a keyboard shortcut? I expect you all to remember that. And hold down the Shift key, and we're going to bring up from the bottom and keep all of our reflection, but we're going to make it look as if I was in the mud, which I've said before. The top part, I think the top part needs to be brought down too. Let's do the same thing up here. And the beauty of Content Aware Scale, rather than free transform. In fact, let's do a free transform here, which is Command T, and bring it down. And notice everything compresses equally. It just smushes it. Let's undo that. The difference with Content Aware Scale is somehow it knows to leave stuff alone as long as it can. So I hold down the Shift key, and notice now, until I actually hit the top of the mountain, it doesn't move it as I move this up. And I just wanted to get down to just above the top, do a little compression there, and then apply that. And we can deselect that. So if I hide the layers below, there's what we're left with. It might need a crop, but I'm gonna make that decision in Lightroom. Why? Because the crop's not permanent. If I crop it in Lightroom, I'm actually throwing away pixels. So to get my crop in Photoshop of just the stuff we want to keep, if you command or right click on the icon of the layer, it selects everything on the layer, which is just the middle, and then we just come up to Image, Crop. And there we go. I'll be right with your question. Okay, so I hit Command S on that, which will save it and send it back into Lightroom. And let's go tab over to Lightroom. And here it comes. All right, and there is our new image. Again, what do I want you to look at? I think it needs a crop or two. So Command apostrophe for another virtual copy, and we'll hit the R key to bring up our cropping tool. I don't think we need all of this because this thing is so big, it overpowers. So let's come in from the left a bit. I'm thinking something like that. And I think we're going to come in, that was the right, by the way. Come in from the left also. I'm going to put Grand Teton on the peak here. And yeah, that's better. And lastly, we'll come down to effects and add a vignette. I'm going to do -14. Now, I also want to add a little bit more interest or focal point to the middle of the frame. So we're going to use another one of my favorite tricks in Lightroom. We're going to create a radial gradient here, which is Shift-M. And I'm just going to click and drag. I want something about, I think about like this. I want you to kind of focus on that part of the image. I don't want the sky, however. So I'm just going to scroll down to subtract and tell it to subtract the sky. And that is so handy. I just love it. And we're going to bring up the exposure a little bit. And maybe add a little saturation. I can add a bunch of saturation, which will subliminally just draw you more to the middle of the image. And as I'm looking at this, I think there's too much sky. So one more crop. I am going to bring it down. Yeah, well, I think about right there. I don't want this little piece to end up exactly in the corner because that will draw you out of the image. And I also don't think I need quite the whole bottom. And by the way, yeah, I just kind of probably unintentionally followed it. This is my golden ratio grid, and my horizon, or my far lakeshore, is exactly on that grid. But now we hit enter, and let's see where we went with this. Let's go to full screen. We'll go back to, there's the original raw file we started with as it's trying to draw in. We did our initial edits in Lightroom to get to here, but then we did some compression and cropping and some color adjustments and ended up getting this. And again, if you look at it, we went from there to there. And now we have a really, it's a lovely image. Okay, any questions before we move on? All right, well, I'll get the next image queued up.
No, you answered Jim's question.
Okay. What did I... Oh, we're not having soup tonight. Oh, wait. Did I put soup way over here? Huh. Can we do soup before appetizers? Yeah, we're going to save the soup for after the appetizers. And here's the image I wanted to play with. Since this is where we're heading on Sunday, this is Moab. This is a place called Courthouse Towers in Arches National Park. And this is during one of the walks, a hike down through the park, and it's really wonderful. Now, what's going on? We are obviously really deep shadows and nothing going on in the sky. But if you look at it, the foreground actually looks exposed perfectly. And while I'm a big fan of exposing to the right when I have clouds, sometimes I don't always do it. I could have opened this up a little bit. I got a little too conservative here. If you look up in the histogram, I've got basically the last 15% or so with nothing going on. So let's go cut to the chase. I'm going to open up the exposure a bit. But I don't want to bring it all the way over. Why? Because there are no whites in this image. You see any white here? So if your histogram's going over to the right, you're overexposed. So let's open up the shadows all the way. And actually, I'm going to bring the highlights down to give me a little more room to open up those shadows. And now let's go in ahead and add our presence. I'm going to add a little bit of texture, little clarity. I think I'm going to save dehaze for later. And let me just add a little vibrance and saturation, and that's already gone a long way. Yes, a question?
What did the original histogram look like?
What did the original histogram look like? All right, let me make a virtual copy of that one. So let's reset it. So there's the original histogram. Now, what's the histogram telling us? Well, there's no clipping. Even as dark as this is, it's not 100%, because if it was, this arrow would be lit up. There is a little bit of brightness over in here. It's kind of hard to see, but that's these pieces of rock right here, right here. But again, there's no pure white in the image. What we did was brought that to there. So, I mean, you could be done with that if you wanted to be. Obviously, I don't want to be. First of all, we have all this orangey rock on a sunny day reflecting up to everything. And look at this juniper right here. It's kind of gone a little too yellow. It needs to have some of the yellow taken out. So let's fix that first. We'll come up to our keyboard, our masking, and I'm going to use keyboard shortcuts from this point on. Again, remember these three keyboard shortcuts: K for brush, M for linear gradient, and Shift M for radial gradient. So we're going to hit K. I've got auto mask on. So let's go ahead and select this juniper. In fact, while we're at it, I see one right over here that's in the sun. The ones in the shadow, it doesn't matter. Because they're in shadow, they've already taken on a cooler color since they're in shadow, so they are already more blue. So I mentioned there's too much yellow in here. You can see the opposite of yellow is blue. So let's bring some blue in, and that's really kind of what junipers look like. I could add a little green to it too if I want to supernatural them a little bit. Excuse me. But yeah, that fixes that. All right, good. So let's go back to our full screen here. Yeah, that looks good. However, what else does the image need? How can we make this a more interesting photograph? Cropping, compression. Do you think this might need a new sky? Do we need put some clouds in here? What do you think? Who wants a new sky? Who wants some clouds? Anybody? Hands? Okay. All right. Obviously you cannot do that in Lightroom. We got to go into Photoshop for that. Am I happy with the depth of the shadows here? I think I want to bring it up a little bit first. So K for my brush. Let's just see what happens. These over here aren't quite as dark as over this right side. So let's just take these. Let's bring that up a little bit and open up the shadows. And I'm going to bring up the blacks too. Yeah, that's all it needed. Shadows are good. You just don't want to have them so inky that they draw the eye. In fact, while I'm at it, I can just click in here and add to that. And as I see that, I don't like what it just did, so I'm going to undo that. All right, so there's our lightness. Good. Let's send this into Photoshop. And by the way, if there were any noise in this image that I thought was going to bother me, you need to do that before you send it into Photoshop. In fact, let's go to detail before we move on. Let's go to the detail and let's look at this thing at 100%. Let's go up into the sky. Is there any noticeable grain up in there? Yeah, not really. A little bit. There's a little bit of grain. So just in case you're going to print this on a glossy stock and you want perfectly ungrainy skies, let's go ahead and apply the denoise to this first before we send it into Photoshop. Because once we send this into Photoshop, then you can't denoise it back in Lightroom. You can use other tools to denoise, but Lightroom on the raw file just does a really good job of it. So let's zoom in at, let's see, 300%. Let's go way up in the sky here. And let's see before I'll turn it off for a second. Yeah, look at that at 300%. So you can see what it's gotten rid of. It really does an amazing job. Although, again, 300% really isn't fair. Okay, now we're ready to send this into Photoshop. So Command E or right click, E or Control E on a Windows machine. A question.
Would you bring up
Would I bring...
HT shadow side of the tower?
Oh, so the question is, would I bring up the shadow side of the tower? No. Was that Russ? That sounds like a Russ question. It was a Russ. No, Russ, I would not do that. But if it's your image, you do what you want. Okay. Boy, what does this need? Honestly, I think it needs some compression and crop, and it needs a new sky. Now, Photoshop has a sky replacement tool. So let's go ahead and use it, but it has some problems. So we'll click on sky replacement, and let me show you what the tools are. This is one of my skies, which I loaded in here. The problem with the Photoshop skies is they have a tendency to be way overdone. Let's see what this one looks like. No, that's wrong. Oh, how about one of my other Western ones? That's too dark. So is that. We'll go with the one I had first. Where'd it go? Let me cancel and do that again. All right, edit, sky replacement. Actually, that might work. Now that I'm looking, it actually is a desert scene. And what we can do is we can move it around, and we're going to do that after the fact. Also, we have this lighting mode thing here. Watch this. We've got multiplying screen. And what that affects, did you notice the tower just got a little bit lighter? And the reason it's doing that is the masks it's going to create are kind of fuzzy, and that's my biggest problem with doing the sky replacement tool, and I'll show you that in a second. Let's just hit OK with this because we need to, here's the sky. If we hold down the base, there's the sky. It's right here. If I hit Command T, I can then move this thing around and make it bigger. And it's bigger than this image already. And you can see the lines running out of the screen. So if you want to see a selection that is bigger than your viewing area, hit Command 0 with it selected. And I can then expand this up and down. Whoops, I'm starting to get the piece that was missing. Yeah, I think something like that. I like that a little bit better. And I probably want to add some saturation to it, but here's my complaint. Let's take a look at the mask right next to this. If I alt-click on here, there's the mask. And when we zoom in on it, Hold on, Di. When we zoom in on you can see there's a lot of fading, and it's actually technically showing through some of the rocks. Yes, what's the question?
Paul wonders how about a vertical crop on the entire.
How about a vertical crop? Paul, stop reading my mind. Yes, I was holding that. I was holding that for later. Yes, that's where we're going to end up. It actually, strangely enough, yeah, you'll hold on, you'll see. But here's the problem with this mask. This is why I don't like when Photoshop does its masking. However, if you click on this and bring in levels right on the mask, which is Command L in Photoshop, you get the levels and you get to see, look at all this stuff that's almost white that it's masking through here. I'm going to simply clip this back and make anything that's white really white. Same thing, we're actually seeing some slight coming through the rocks. Well, that's the dark stuff. Let's just make this truly a black or white mask. In fact, I'm going to bring the white in. So now it's going to be white or black, and that's going to make for a much cleaner interface. Here's the however. Because of this sky, and the sky that was behind here, which was kind of dark, I can't do my usual fade the sky. So we need to find a different way to do it, and we're going to do that with a white gradient. So let's go hit, and gradient is the G key. Notice how Photoshop, all its keyboard shortcuts are the first letter. Gradient, and we've got white in the foreground, so that's what it's going to use. And I want, under basics, let's open that one up. We've got white to black, white to transparent, and then black to white. We want white to transparent. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, which will make it perfectly straight up and down. And I'm going to do it on this layer. Actually, maybe, you know what? I think I'm going to do it on another layer. Let's create a new layer and do the white gradient here. I have an idea. So I'm going to start just below the horizon, hold down the Shift key, which will make it straight up and down. And I'm going to drag it up to about there, which is going to make that whole thing go whiter. And as I see it, that's not enough. Let's undo that. Let's hit G again. Let's bring it up higher. I'm going to bring it all the way up to there. And I think that's good because remember we have this mask here. Hold down the Alt key and drag the mask up. And now when I hide this, look what it just did. It just lightened at the horizon, which is what happens on the sky. As you get down close, it gets lighter. If that's a little too much, since we did this on another layer, we can bring the opacity down a little bit, which again fades the sky. Look at this. Look at the difference. That looks much more natural because that's what happens to a sky as it gets down near the horizon. So if you're going to use Photoshop Sky Replacement Tool, I highly recommend you go in and edit the mask because it's going to give you a much cleaner result. And if you want this effect, I just showed you how to do it with a gradient and then copy the mask that you just fixed. So I'm going to zoom out again. As I'm looking at the image, I think the whole thing needs some saturation now. So let's go again to our adjustment layers and go to use saturation. And I'm going to add a bunch of saturation to it. Oh, that looks so much better. Love it. Do I want to compress the foreground? You know, this foreground is really cool as is. And Paul stole my thunder already, but that's okay, Paul. Still love you. I'm going to save this as is, but send it back into Lightroom. So just Command or Control S. We'll take our edits, and the more I'm looking at it, the more I like this sky because it's just the clouds are not the subject; they just break up the solid blue of the sky. Where a lot of if you use Photoshop's skies, they're all overblown. Okay, so here's our image back in Photoshop. As I'm looking at the sky, I think it's a little cyan again. So let's one more time go into our color mixer, get our eyedropper, and very little bit. It's just slightly to the cyan. I'm very sensitive to that for some reason. Just right there, just a little bit. Okay. So let's make a couple of virtual copies. Make 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, so what are our options for cropping here? Let's hit the R key on this first one. And this is technically correct. Look at that. Our horizon's right on the top of our golden ratio grid. But I think I want to bring this up. But you know what? I'm not sure if I like the perspective. And here's where I'm going to start to play with the transform tool. Let's go into transform here and watch. If you've ever tried with the horizontal slider, watch what it can do. As you do this, if you drag to the right, it will make the right side of the image expand. You drag to the left, it'll make the left side of the image expand. And, oh, you know, I think I like that because I love the strength of this. Now, we lost stuff here, but let's take the X offset and move it back in so we get everything that was there. I'm going to actually bring down the scale so that we can see the whole image and decide what we want to move or not. And then the Y offset is up and down. I think I like that. So let's hit R for our crop tool now. And you might decide, oh, I didn't want to crop the bottom of that brush right here. So if you wanted to keep it, yeah, guess what the answer is? You got to take it into Photoshop. We're going to sacrifice the bottom of this brush. We're just going to save the juniper. And it sounds like a t-shirt. Save the junipers. And bring that over from the right, bring this over from the left. And where should this be? Let's move the whole thing over to the left a little bit so that we can have all that stuff on the lower left. And let's add our vignette to this and see how that looks. So we just took it from here to here. See how it makes, forget the sky, but see how it, oh, here's the before, right there to there. See how it makes the subject a little bigger? And the stuff on the left bigger just by doing that horizontal rotation. It's a really powerful tool in Lightroom that gets ignored by most people. What else could I do? Let's do one other. You know, I think I'm going to go back to this one. I love the proportions of this. Let's make a virtual copy of this one. And let's go back to our transform. I'm going to bring the scale down a little bit more because I want to keep some more stuff. I want to see if I can keep the bottom of that one brush. And as I was looking at this image, Paul had mentioned about making it a vertical. And we'll try that. But first, I see this as a square. So let's hit crop, the R key, and go to 1:1. And let's see if that works. This is kind of what I was seeing out of this one. And come over here. Just get the tower off to the right a little bit. We'll bring this corner down, and it allows us to get a little bit of dirt underneath that brush. And I like it. So Paul, this is what I was seeing. I saw this as a square. I like it. Let's take this one, Command apostrophe it. Let's see what happens if we make it more a pure vertical. Paul, what do you think? You think 8x10 or something skinnier?
Oh, something skinnier.
All right. So like an 11x17?
Yeah.
All right, let's try 11x17. And little too skinny, I think, for this scene. I think this thing needs that rock.
Okay.
And we don't want to cut off the juniper that much. So let's take this here. I'm going to unlock this. We're going to do kind of a manual crop to what the image needs. And just want to, let's see. Where is this? Well, that would be on the grid. Let's get a little bit of it. Let's try that. You know what? I think we do need to crop the juniper a little bit. Let's bring it in a little bit more. And a little bit less on the bottom. And I think right there. I think that works. What do you think? I mean, we could take this thing out, but honestly, to have everything that was telling the story, let's I'm not going to give up yet. Let's come over here a little bit. I hate to say it.
Back to a square.
I hate to say it. I think this is an 8x10. You guys know I hate 8 by 10s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an 8 by 10.
You could always move the bush.
That's true. Diane just mentioned you could always move the bush in, the juniper tree.
Yeah.
I would actually maybe consider that, but yeah. No, you know what? I still keep going back to the square as far as telling the story. Now, with this thing here, what might I like it better with the foreground brought up closer to the rock? I'm saying yes. I think that would look better. In fact, if we jump back over to Photoshop, let's take this entire thing and flatten it before it gets huge. I'll make a copy of that. Let's see what happens if we take the bottom half of the image here and do a content aware scale on it and bring all of this stuff up a little bit closer. I think that's going to tighten up the image quite a bit. In fact, I think it's going to allow us to make this more of a panoramic feel.
Yep.
So let's see how that does. And I'm just going to crop in Photoshop to cut to the chase. Here's kind of what I'm seeing. I'm thinking something like that. And to really tell the story of the entire place, if you want it, I think that's probably our answer. Because by doing that compression in the foreground, it brought the juniper closer to the tower. And it's trying to draw it in. Is that this one? Yeah, there we go. See how much tighter it is compared to, come on. It's not playing. All right. So I'll show, one I had done earlier today was when I was playing around with this, I really compressed it and I really squashed it. Changed the perspective a little bit, but this kind of told the story of the entire place. But I think I like that. I think does the best job of telling the whole story. All right. We still got a main, oh man, we're not going to get to everything. We just don't have the time. I might have to ask you guys what you want to do. Do you want to do, you want a soup? You want some soup? Or you want to jump right in the main course? It's already 20 after. Let's go to the main course, and if we have time, we'll come back for soup. All right, as I mentioned, I have this image here, and you would think, blah. And I took 2 shots while I was here, this one and this one. And they're slightly different. Basically, this one, I backed off my zoom just a smidge. And that's what I always tell people when we're out in the field. When you think you got your shot, back off. And you can see there are 2 different numbers. That's 53, that's 54. I backed off of my zoom just a little bit because it gives you so much more flexibility. So what does it need? Is there a subject here? Well, we can make one. We have to direct the eye. So we've got to get in here and fix this. So let me hit a command apostrophe. And let's do our basics. Let's bring up the shadows all the way. Bring down the highlights. We need to bring this whole thing up a bit. And we'll do our texture clarity, a little dehaze. And then some vibrant saturation. Okay, now it's starting to look a little better. What are the problems? Well, there's some haze off in the mountains here. So we need to fix that. This is in Ireland, by the way. This is near Killarney National Park. Hit K for our brush. And here's what I'm seeing. This whole area here needs to be dehazed. It needs to be brought out because there's a lot going on here. So let's scroll down to dehaze, see how that looks. Yeah, that looks so much better. Also, I want to draw attention to them a little bit by warming them up. And again, when I say warming up, that means it needs yellow because blue is cool, yellow is warm. So let's warm it up a little bit. Yes, that looks better. And also, as I'm seeing this, I think I want to make the blacks a little darker. So let's bring those down. Because then I'm going to open up the entire exposure of the area a little bit. And then add some more saturation to our warmth. Okay, much better. Let's hit K again. What are the other problems? Where is your eye going? Where is it not going? Well, for one, there's a little path right here. It's drawing you out of the image. So we got to fix that. these shadows here are extremely contrasty. So they're drawing. I don't want you to go there. I want you to go here. I want to get to these rocks. So let's de-emphasize these. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to click around in these deep shadows here. Let's get rid of these, or not rid of them. Let's open them up a bit. Or flatten them out a bit is really what we want to do. So let's bring down the contrast way down and open up the exposure a little bit. All right, that's good. Now I'm going to hit K again, and I want to get the lighter parts of this. And I'm going to change the color. I think I want to make them a little greener. Blue and green in there. Actually, maybe not. Maybe I want them yellower. Yeah, I do want them yellower. So yellow looks better. All right, that looks good. And again, here's our mask. If we hide what we've done, it's a subtle change, but we made it slightly less contrasty, so it's less attracting our eye. Now, as I mentioned, we have this path here. It seems fairly innocent, but it is leading you right out of the image. So we got to take this corner down here and darken it up. So I'm going to hit K. This time I'm going to turn off auto mask because I want it to get everything I paint over. So I'm just going to take this entire bottom right here, coming down into the middle, and I'm going to bring down the highlights first and then the exposure. It doesn't have to go dark, but we just want it darker than the other places nearby so that there's something brighter to go to. Looking much better. All right, now let's get our brush and start getting our attention on this rock formation. So again, I'm painting without masking because I wanted to get all the parts of the rock, not just the dark parts. Now let's bring the exposure up on this and open up our shadows. Oh yeah, that's looking lovely. Now, should they be warmer or cooler? Because warmer usually means closer, but I'm not sure. Let's try it. If we add yellow to it, no, yeah, maybe a little, maybe just right there. We also have this very bright green here. Yes, it was that bright, but let's hit K anyway. And let's come in through here and let's just bring it down a little bit because we're going to do something with a light path to make you go here. Now we have some rock faces that are very bright. So I'm going to hit K again, and this time we're going to turn auto mask on. I want this one, this one, this one, this little thing here, right there. I just want to tone down some of those really bright highlights. So I'm going to bring down the whites. Ah, it looks better. Oh, am I happy with the sky? Yeah, I am. That's fine. All right. That's good. Let's go ahead and add a vignette while we're here. Let's hit enter to get out of our masks. Let's go to effects way down the bottom. Let's add a little vignette because I have something else in mind. Okay. That's good. Now let's make 3 virtual copies. Command apostrophe 1, 2, 3. Now we were playing with the transform tool before. We're going to go there again. Again, I want to make this thing where your eye goes. So let's go to transform, and we're going to use the horizontal again. And when we do that, it's going to make them come closer to us. And now we're going to take the X slider and just drag it to the right. And look how much bigger the rocks are now. And it's also kind of proving to us that we really don't need that much sky. So let's try the crop tool. Let's just crop to here and to here and see what that does for our image. And I'm liking it. Let's hit enter on that. And look at the difference between before and after. Here's where we just left off. And here's with the transform tool. Look at the difference. It's like I changed position. The stuff over here got de-emphasized and a little smaller. These rocks now are bigger in the frame, all because of that horizontal rotation we just did. I think that's pretty cool. Let's take this one because I like everything about this. Let's hit K, which is our brush again. And this time, let's see, I'm going to turn off auto mask. And I'm going to draw a path up to here with light. Add that as well. We might have to take out these bright spots. In fact, let's just cut to the chase and do that. We'll go to subtract. And with a brush, and make it a little smaller. And oops, I got to turn auto mask back on. Subtract with the brush. Auto mask. This time we want auto mask on. And now I can go in and just get these little highlighty spots. I don't think I want this part of the grass to be brightened because it's already kind of bright. And even on the rock there and up in here. Okay, now let's increase this. See, just a little bit. See, you can obviously go way too far. And if you're not sure about how much to add, what I like to do is not look here, but to look over here somewhere, and out of the corner of my eye, when I can see it brightening in the corner of my eye, I know that's enough. I think something like that. I still think the grass is a little too bright down here, so let's just get the bottom of it. I'm going to kind of add to our vignette. There's a little bit right here too, and there's a stick or something there. Let's bring the exposure down, and the contrast will flatten it. And I think that's pretty good. So let's take a look and see what it is that we achieved with this. Let's go to full screen back to our original. There's the original raw file, and you would probably think, gee, there's not an image here. Here's our first edit. So it's an improvement, but the focus of the image, it doesn't really have a strong focus. The rocks are there, but there's a lot of other stuff going on. It's kind of more akin to having wallpaper for your computer screen. But if we look what just happened going from there to applying the horizontal transformation. Look at how much more powerful the rock formation at the front is. And the whole composition and the whole feeling of the thing is so much better. And then our last little adjustment, where we did the light path from the bottom center up to the rock, look at that. It's subtle, but it will subliminally, it's subliminally directing you up to that rock. So again, we went from there to there. Now we have an image that's actually something worth looking at. It's cool stuff, isn't it? Any questions?
Nope.
So, I mean, have you guys played with this transform panel much? Because it really is, it's very powerful. And it's like having a view camera in your hands where you can pull the view camera left and right and change the perspective. And by the way, if you never shot one, that's exactly the kind of stuff that you could do with a view camera. While we're at it, as long as we're talking about tools, I didn't originally plan on doing this one, but I want to share this one with you as well. I know some of you have been here. This is the Cliffs of Moher in just south of Killarney, Ireland, or north of Killarney Island. And it was a lovely day, but it was very close to noon. And where the sun was this time of year, the cliffs were completely in shadow. Now, this is a pano. This has already been put together. And obviously, there's big problems here. So let's Command apostrophe this. And see if this is the kind of thing you might look at and you just give up on. And I understand that. But let's try. Shadows all the way up, good. Highlights all the way down. Okay, it's made it flat, but that's okay, because we're going to do our little triumvirate here of the three. And look what the dehaze, look what's starting to happen to stuff as we bring that out. This is really working now for this image. We need to do more, but it's showing us that this image can be saved. All right, now the sky is kind of a weird color. So let's deal with that first. And you might be thinking, Joe, look at the ocean back there. Something's really wrong. And I'm going to show you a cool way to fix that, which is why I wanted to bring this image up. So let's add some blue to the sky. Oh, that was easy. Look at how much better that looks. That looks great. So compositionally, before we fix the horizon, the ocean curling off, what are the other problems we're going to have to figure out? The face of the cliffs itself. We need to do something to add more interest to that. Down here, this grass is a little too yellow. It's also very bright, so it's drawing our eye. And then there's this kind of rock ledge here that isn't working for me. So what do we do with that? You know what? I should have done this first, but let's see if we can get away with it. I'm going to hit Q. And I've got generative AI remove tool set up. So let's just, I don't like this thing. Let's just get rid of it. And let's see what Lightroom, and look what it does. It chooses this whole area. No, it's too much. So let's click on subtract. I really just want to get rid of the rock. I want to leave all this stuff alone, including even the grass down here. I don't want it to get rid. I just want to get rid of the rock. So something like that, even here, that's just all grass. All right, now let's click on remove and see if Lightroom can handle that. Also, we're choosing a much smaller area. Oh, that's not bad. So 1, 2, that's a little too busy. 3. It's between 3 and 1. I think I like 3. Yeah. Yeah, 3 wins. Okay. But now again, this thing is still too bright. A couple different ways we could approach this. Let's try it first with the color mixer. So we'll get our eyedropper. Let's come down in here and pick one of these greens. And let's first bring the luminance down, which will darken it. That's good. Let's bring the saturation down a smidge, and let's make it a little greener because it was a little yellow. And you can see here, look where it was in the green, yellow, orange. You can see the color was almost yellow. So that helped. So yeah, I think a little saturation. I might want to bring it down a little more. But that's fine for a start. Before we go any further, is this driving anyone nuts right here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I figured it would. You would think you would have to go into Photoshop to fix this. You do not. Because watch this. Under lens corrections, we're going to use the manual distortion slider and watch what it does.
Well, that's cool.
Isn't that cool? And look at this. Look at how straight the horizon now of the ocean is. That's pretty cool. Now let's hit the rotate, the cropping tool. Just want to make sure that thing is really perfectly straight, and now it is. It just needed a 0.16 angle rotation. Now we did lose this stuff down below. Do we care? Actually, no. If I wanted to add the sky back, we could do that. That would have to be done in Photoshop. Let's just get rid of this stuff for now. Let's bring that up. Because if we decided, we could bring this into Photoshop and just add to that sky. Actually, I think we need at least that much. We'll do that. We'll do that at the end. We'll put that much sky back in. Now and there's a little too much on the right. Let's deal with the cliff. So we need a brush. Let's get a nice big brush here. We have auto mask turned on. We need to open this part up. I want your eyes to go here. So how do I do that? I need to brighten it. I need to add contrast, and I need to warm it up because that'll make it appear closer. So let's start out with a little exposure. Question?
Paul wants to know, how did you get the point color tool to show the enlargement when using?
Paul asked, how do you get the point color tool to show the enlargement when you're doing it? We'll do that in a second. Just hold on. So I've got this. All right, this is starting to brighten up. Let's do that. I'm going to bring up the blacks or make the blacks darker. Oh, look at that already. And I want to add a lot of warmth to this. So let's bring yellow into here. And do I want some magenta? Maybe a little. No, actually I do. I want to warm it up. And I'm going to add some more contrast, bring it up a little more. I'm going to actually bring up the highlights and bring down the blacks even more. And even add some more yellow. And as I'm looking at it, I think this is a little too bright. But what I'm going to do is click on subtract. I'm going to click on subtract with a brush, but I'm going to turn down the flow because I don't want to completely take it. I'm bringing it down to 70% or so. And look at that. There we go. It's still there, but not as much. Okay, so that has helped. Now let's deal with over here. Let's hit K again. Let's get these areas. Oh, I'm still on decreased flow. That's okay. We can bring that up. All right, I'm picking up a little ocean. So rather than go to subtract, I can just hit the Alt key. And that will turn it to a minus. Let's get rid of the stuff had hit the water. And let's see what we can do with this. I think it needs dehaze. Dehaze, clarity, and we need to bring up the exposure. So let's bring that up. And let's bring the blacks in again. And this one needs, the top needs to be adjusted separately. So let's hit K again. We still have our auto mask. Let's go back up to 100% flow here. And let's get this area right through there. Let's add a little bit of contrast and dehaze to that. So a little dehaze there. Whoop, not that much. Actually, that's good. And then we'll bring the exposure up and the contrast up some more. In fact, I'm going to open up the highlights and bring down the blacks. I think something like that. All right. Now, there's a color thing going on here, too. I think I want to warm that up through here. So let's try that. Let's get our color mixer tool again. And if I click on this, as I come over it, it should show you that tool. Is it not showing up for you as I have it hovering over the rocks?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I want to, I think, add a little bit of warmth in here. So here's our colors. There's our cyan, there's our magenta. I want to bring it over to warm. So let's drag this over to the magenta a little bit. And look, see how it's taken away that kind of pale green cyan to it? Look at that little bit of warmth, what it does for the image. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. As I'm looking at it, I think I want to darken this edge up here. So let's get another brush. And I want to take a little of the warmth out. Just right through there. So let's darken that. And let's make that a little bluer. Because again, what I'm trying to get you to look here, whether you want to or not. Okay. Enter, enter. I think there's one more thing I'm going to want to do to this. Actually, this green to me is still looking too yellow. So let's get a brush and let's just select this thing. Let's make it a little bluer. Yeah, that's better. And let's bring the exposure down. Yeah, I'll make, oh, that's better. Now it's not competing so much. Let's send this into Photoshop. I still think it needs a crop, but I'm going to do two things. So Command E to send this into Photoshop. And we will fill in that little bit of missing sky. So I'll get the magic wand, click on there. Oh, wait a second. Remember that tool we had? What was that? Function F12? Function Shift F12?
Yeah, that's right.
Function Shift F12. Et voila. Come on, that's cool stuff. Admit it. Okay. I want to try something. I want to run this through Viveza. So if we go to Filters, to Nik Collection 8, again, if you haven't bought the Nik Collection, get it. For landscape photography, it's just amazing. So I'm going to add some structure to this whole thing. Oh, it's like putting on polarized sunglasses. Saturation, I think that's probably okay. Let's add a little bit. We're shooting Kodachrome today. I still think this top area here is a little bit too flat. We'll fix that back in Lightroom. But the warmth slider, I find myself using it a lot because, look, cool, no. However, just a little bit, like under 10%, just seems to add some life to it. And watch the slider as I pull it. You'll see the before and after. There's the before. There's the after. Look what that slight bit of warmth does, particularly to the sky. So much better. So let's hit apply on that. And there we go. Let's save that. And one last, I decided I want to darken this and take some of the yellow out of it. So we'll do that back in Lightroom. Here it comes. And we haven't done our vignette yet either, but we're going to do a crop. So as I mentioned, up in here, I'm still not happy with the density up in here. It needs more, that needs some dehaze. So let's dehaze that. Oh, yeah, that's what it needed. Okay. Let's hit enter on this. Let's do our vignette. Yeah, I like it. Now, as I mentioned, cropping wise, we've got this scene and this open ocean here, and it is kind of inviting you to leave. And we could fix that just by not making this thing so big. So let's hit R and just take away some, we don't need to take a lot. I think just maybe about that much is enough for the cliffs to overpower everything else. And I think, I think I want my vignette maybe even a little more. And I think I'm happy with that. Let's go look at full screen. There's our raw file. You would think hopeless. Whoops. And there's what we did for it. And actually something like this print, this is something that is yelling if you wanted this. Yeah, there are better days to be here. But this is yelling for a glossy stock, a pure glossy print. This would not work as well as on a soft kind of paper or a matte paper. But we took that to there and we fixed that horizon of the ocean, remember, just in Lightroom. Cool stuff. Question?
Yes. That weird
I don't have a question, but I just
Oh.
put in the chat
Hold. Yeah.
That's her question.
That's Marla. Go ahead, Marlene.
that I think that cyan shape near the
Right here?
Yeah,
Yeah, I see it. It's really there, though.
I know it because it's the continuation of
Yeah.
the cyan.
So, but it bothers Marlene. And since we haven't had anything bothering Russ yet tonight, we've got Marlene to step in where Russ has been slacking off. So, Russ is muted, so he couldn't comment. Let's hit K because it's bothering Marlene. We can't have that.
Bother anyone else?
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually slightly bothers me too, but it really was there.
It was.
However,
No
all right.
Magic Bloom product.
all right, that's fine. We'll add a
I'll
little.
have to look at my pictures to see if mine have that.
All right, so what's wrong with it? Well, it's a little too green. It's a little too light. I don't want to get rid of it completely, but I want it to more closely match what's going on there. So just select it with the brush, with the auto mask. Bring that down. Let's see which way. A little more blue, a little more green maybe. No, actually a little magenta. We'll make it closer to the blue. And now it kind of matches. It seems like it needs a little dehaze too.
Much better.
Yeah. Now it doesn't draw attention to itself, and we can hide the mask, and you can see we just took it from there to there.
Yeah,
Hi,
Magic.
Joe.
Does that match better?
So I have one more question on this.
Sure.
On the two cliffs on the right-hand side, it
Yes.
almost looks like it has a little bit of a halo or a fog or something.
It actually is fog. You're
Okay.
talking about right there.
Yes.
That really is there.
That's fog.
That's fog. However, yes, sometimes people think when you do an edit that is actually a problem, a filter problem. And that's a valid thing to get rid of if it's bothering you. So, again, we've got our mask. We got auto mask turned on. Let's just come in through there. And I think a little dehaze is probably all it needs. And it's gone.
Yeah, good.
Personally, I liked it, but that's okay.
Russ said this.
But I had one comment from Marlene.
Yeah.
Joe was taking the picture from a little bit of a different angle, like about a foot taller, and so you may have seen more of that cyan than Marlene's view.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I would have had to get a box from Marlene.
Right.
No, but, guys, this is fun. I encourage this. You know that. You got time for one more?
Yep.
All right. Let's do one more. I think I want to do our soup, which we never got to. Let's do soup. All right. We're having our soup as our post-dessert, our cleanser. And we're going to use the Matterhorn for this. Okay. So virtual copy, command apostrophe. And let's look at the histogram. And it's pretty good. You can see there's a very little bit here getting very close to the pure whites. And if we zoom in on the snow, even the snow, we're getting 90.8. So we're completely safe. but I really wanted to preserve the clouds and the snow here. So let's just bring up let's cut to the chase and bring up the shadows. Actually, again, we're going to bring the highlights down because that gives us some overall exposure latitude. And I'm going to go a little lighter than I want because I know it's going to darken when I go and add our presence sliders, our texture, clarity, and dehaze. And let's add some vibrance and saturation there. And looking a heck of a lot better already, especially we go back, here's the raw, just by moving those sliders. Look what we were able to do. Okay, so a lot of times when you move these sliders, what happens? Blues change, or they seem to shift. What happened to our sky? Color mixer. And we look at it, it's slightly to the cyan. I actually think I want to make it a little darker also, or a little lighter actually. It's a little saturated. I'm pushing it over to the magenta a little bit, which will make it a deeper blue, but lightening it up at the same time by bringing the saturation down just a smidge. This thing over here is a distraction. Unfortunately, there's no way to get rid of it completely, but let's make it less of a distraction by taking away some of its darkness and contrast. So let's bring up the shadows on it and then the exposure as well. And by doing that, it becomes less offensive. Okay, what else? The mountain itself. I mean, the Matterhorn's a spectacular piece of rock. So let's select it. Got a little sky there, and actually this is similar rock over here, so let's include it. I got a little sloppy there. So I'm just going to go to subtract and subtract the sky out because that's all I really care about here. Subtract the sky to get that one little bit right there, good. And let's bring up the exposure a smidge because I want to give this more contrast. Let's also warm it up, add a little bit of warmth to it. And then we'll add some clarity and dehaze just to that. And look how it brings that out. Lovely. What else do we have going on here? There's way too much foreground. The question is, do we want to compress it or do we just want to crop it? In this case, I'm going to probably recommend going to a crop because there was so much movement on the water that it's not a reflection really worth keeping. So but before we do that, we've got, this is obviously a contrail. This one I'm not bothered by. There's a little bit of one here, but let's get rid of the contrail. So Q, and the question is this something that Lightroom can do, or are we going to have to use generative AI for this? Let's find out. Let's just let this up. That was the generative AI tool. Picks too much. Let's bail out of that. Oops, I stop. Let's delete that. Let's just use the old-fashioned Band-Aid tool. The old-fashioned way of getting rid of stuff in Lightroom and see if that works. And it did. Again, the beauty of using that is that it's not limited in resolution since it's actually using another part of the image. Is there anywhere else we want to do? You know, there seems to be something going on right here now. I think we're going to have to go to our generative AI here to clean this up. So let's just select this to smooth it out. And we'll add to it. I want right up to the top. And tell it to remove. And see what it comes up with. And then we'll figure out the crop there. Oh, yeah, that's better. All right, let's go right to the crop. Cropping tool. Again, since it's a windy day, windy point here, I'm not really concerned or that interested in what's going on. Maybe a little off the top. And technically the Matterhorn peak is right on our left grid here. Do I want to come in from the left at all? Actually, no. I think this tells a better story. Maybe just a little bit. Maybe just right to there. And let's add our vignette and see if there's any other light painting we need to do after that. So there's our vignette, and the answer is yes. We need to lighten this thing up. And I'm going to use that that trick with the radial gradient, which if I remember is Shift M. So let's get a nice big radial gradient. I'm thinking like this. And I'm going to rotate it by coming off one of the little control dots here. Yeah, just like that. And we're going to subtract the sky again. See what it does. Wow, that was, I thought it was going to have a problem with the clouds. It did not. So let's bring up the exposure on that. We'll bring the highlights down. I want to bring up the midtones and leave the highlights alone. And does it need a little more warmth there to draw us? Let's see. And the answer is no, actually. Actually, if anything, I think I might like it a little cooler. Maybe something like that. It also will be, I think it's partly because of the vignette. It got a little dark over here. So let's hit K. And you can see we've got some hikers over here. Let's bring that up a little bit. Yeah, I like that. And now our sky. I think it's a little too dark. So let's get our color mixer again. Oh, I've already been sampled. Okay, let's bring up the luminance. Yeah, that's better. And I'm going to take some saturation about it. The Swiss sky is not as saturated as, say, like the American West. However, I do want some more structure in here. I think we're going to have to send this into Viveza as well. In fact, this looks a little too dark. Do you see this over here? How do we fix that? We're going to use a linear gradient, which is M. And I'm going to drag like this. I want to get that entire bit of sky lightened up a little bit, but I just want it where it's the sky. So I need to click on the three dots and tell it, give me this intersecting the mask with the sky. So that's going to combine the linear gradient just with the sky, which did exactly what I want. And let's just open it. Ah, there we go. So much better. All right, let's go ahead. Let's send this into Viveza as well. Edit in Viveza 8, and we'll hit enter. And let's see what Viveza can do for us with this image. I think it's going to want to be warmed up a little bit. We'll see. Come on. All right, here we go. Let's pull the before-after slider over to the left. Let's add some structure. Oh, that looks, be careful. The clouds are going to get too structure-y. Saturation. It could use a smidge, even after we pulled it out. Doesn't need warmth. Let's see. Coolness, no. A little bit of warmth, yes. And there's a question.
Jim says the reflection on the left is too dark.
The reflection on the left is too dark. I don't disagree. Hold that thought. Let's see. So what we've done is, here's the before and after. Subtle. It just added a little bit of warmth to the yellows and a little bit of structure. Structure is kind of like clarity in Lightroom, but it's much better. It's a much better filter. Come on. So, yeah, see, here's the before and after. I kept this structure just a little bit, but notice how it just added a little depth to the clouds. Jim mentioned about this is too dark. I don't disagree. Let's bring it up. Let's bring up the exposure there, and bring down the blacks, or bring them up actually. Is that better, Jim? Does that pass muster?
Yeah, you darken the mountain behind it, but then you didn't darken the shadow, and it just looks
right. Yeah, yeah. So here, I just lightened them both up a little bit. All right. And you know what? As I'm looking at this crop, I still think that's too much reflection. I think this needs to be more about the mountain because there's just too much here. By the way, I want to check something. I want to look at the exposure here. No, it's a 60th of a second. Okay. I still think there's too much on the bottom. I think this needs to be here. And do I want the Matterhorn to be a smidge taller? Let's see if the Matterhorn looks better taller. And I'm going to go back to our transform, and we're going to change the aspect ratio. And if I pull it in, look what you can do. can make it taller or thinner. And I think this needs to be right there. Doesn't that look better? Of course it does. I can just hit auto crop, the constrained crop right there. So we just took it from there to there. Doesn't that look better? In fact, you could even decide that maybe you don't want this right edge of the picture. Let's make one more virtual copy and bring this over. And as I do that, I think I do want a little bit more down here, just as a pedestal base for the rest of the image. And I think it's kind of yelling for a slightly darker vignette now. So let's darken that up. And I think that's pretty good. I think that's the winner. So we went from this and we had to protect the highlights. That's why the shadows got so dark. And we turned it into that. What the heck was that? Is that somebody's phone ring? Whose phone's ringing? It's going to be on the recording. Did you find it? Okay. Anyway. But again, pretty cool. Because look, that's what we started with. That's where we took it. Love it. What time is it? Holy cow, it's 9 o'clock. Okay. What did I not get to? Let's look at the grid. Let's see. I didn't do this one. I didn't do the one that Paul had as his background. I didn't do there was a panel I was going to do. And okay, I'll save that for next time. So speaking of next time, here's next time. We will be back on November 19th, which is, what, is that 2-3 days before Thanksgiving, something like that? And pick up again. I'll try to get back to some of the ones I missed. And again, as always, guys, if you have any kind of tool or technique or something that's giving you a hard time or that you'd like to dive into a little bit more, please send me an email. I am happy to add, and I'm always looking for ideas so we can do something interesting. I started playing around a little more with the transform menu, whatever, tools in Lightroom, and I realized that I hadn't spent too much time in there. And it's one thing to mess with the aspect ratio, but I have a lot of fun with that horizontal slider by skewing the image left and right and emphasizing different parts of the image. It's really it's a great tool for really reshaping your images. All right, well, that's it for me. As I mentioned, Diane and I are heading out to Durango, Colorado tomorrow. I'm looking forward to Friday, so I can have not only hot chocolate, but breakfast at the Durango Diner.
Have a great trip.
Thank you much. And look for the news. We'll have stuff in the newsletters next Friday about Moab. And we'll talk to you when we get back. Till then, everybody, be well.
Yeah. Bye.
Good night.